it's Joe. Got the framing a little bit better. I don't know if I like this framing on the ground. I might go back to my office chair, but right now I am recording a video for you. Yesterday I talked about the first part of my trip to Colombia and leading into me being homeless for a couple days and how that affected me. And this all goes into a series of videos that I didn't explain this last time, but I'm talking about one of the biggest flaws that I have, or that I had, that I've grown out of, that I've taught myself out of, and that is a lack of discipline, and I felt very entitled to things. And the reason was because when I was growing up, my dad would get me everything I wanted, even if he couldn't afford it. He essentially spoiled me. And, he had the best intentions in mind, but it hurt me deeply. I gained a feeling of entitlement to things, and I was very, very much like that rich kid mentality. My dad couldn't really afford it, so he went into debt to get me things I didn't need, that I just wanted. Every time I was a little uncomfortable, he would buy me things to make me feel more comfortable, and it gave me really bad habits and mindsets. So it eventually led to me being homeless in Colombia. And I talked about the first part of that. I'm going to talk about the second part of that. And then tomorrow I'm going to talk about the good parts of Colombia, because I don't want to give Colombia a bad rap. I mean, there are some things in Colombia that are worse than America, but there's some amazing things. So I'm going to go back through the story and fill in the good parts, because these two stories, I'm just talking about the bad parts because of I'm making a point of how I had to hit rock bottom to learn how to get myself out of a state of being spoiled. And then on Sunday, which is the next day, if you're seeing this in the future, it's Friday today. On Sunday, I'm going to release a video explaining how I got out of being spoiled and how you can get out of being spoiled. If you're in a place where you grew up being spoiled and you're noticing you have no discipline, you have a sense of entitlement, not a good sense of entitlement, because a sense of entitlement to an extent is good, but a really like a negative sense of entitlement where you have to do no work and you're not putting any effort into things and you're expecting people to just give you whatever you want, that can be quite negative. And so I'm going to help you break out of that, because I broke out of that myself. You have no idea how deeply entitled I was. It was pretty bad. So without further ado, I left off last time about when I went from Cali to Colombia, which is a city in Colombia, to Medellín, Colombia, which is, you've heard about, that was depicted in Narcos. It was the center of the Pablo Escobar thing. But I'm going to rewind a little bit, because there was a moment where I was broke, and I decided that I was going to exchange my services, my graphic design services, because I was waiting for some Fiverr stuff to come in, because it took like a week or so, or a few days for that money to come in. And I was going to go from hostel to hostel to be like, yo, I'm going to exchange my graphic design services in exchange to stay here. Is that okay with you? Like how much can I have to do? Can I do that for you? And I first went to a hostel. The first hostel I went to, I'm going to call their name out, because the hostel owner attacked me and threatened to get me locked up, because he said, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is true, but he said he paid off the police in the area, and that he had the power to pay the people in jail, to pay the police to put me in jail for whatever reason he wanted. But I'll get to that. I went to the first hostel I went to was Tropica Hostel in Cali, Colombia. I don't know if they're still around. And I was like, hey, can I exchange, do you need any graphic design services? I'll exchange my graphic design services for stay, because I need somewhere to stay. I don't have any money right now. And he was like, okay, just do 4 hours a day, and then you can stay, as long as you do 4 hours a day. I need some flyers done for this event and that event. And I'm like, cool, that sounds great. I also want to do some laundry. My laundry's dirty. How would that work? It's like, yeah, just do 2 extra hours. So do 6 hours, and then you can do your laundry that evening. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go in there, and the next day I wake up to this awesome breakfast. They have hot chocolate caliente, which is amazing. I'm gonna talk about that in tomorrow's video when I talk about the good parts of Colombia. And the eggs, I'm just going to talk about the food because the food was amazing. The eggs were like so orange, like deep and like perfect, that very flavorful, like butter, and it was amazing. The breakfast was so good. And so I got some of that, and I started to work. And I got a couple of versions of a flyer done for a salsa event he was hosting. And that evening, he was like, "Okay, cool. So let me see what you got." I showed him. Okay, cool. That sounds great. By the way, my wife, she makes some of the decisions around here, and she doesn't think you're a real graphic designer. So you can stay tonight, but we'll figure it out tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, but we did. He said that I could stay 5 days, but you did say 5 days, and I want to kind of stick to that. So I'd like to get an answer, a concrete answer as soon as possible. So tomorrow, I'd like to talk to you and your wife so we can get a concrete answer about like whether I can stay or not, because it's kind of important to me. He's like, okay, no problem. Like my wife will be here tomorrow. Next day, there's a lot of police officers around, and they're going out to film some kind of promo for tourism. I'm like, that's really cool. It's a connected guy. I talked to some of the police officers. They seem really cool. One of the guys was like, "Yeah, I'll take you out on my motorcycle." That never happened, but he was a nice guy, and he was like, they're all just seemed like cool people. And I went out for the day, hung out with a friend who wanted some help with a website, and then did 4 to 6 hours of work on more flyers. And I came back, and he came back a little bit after I did, and he's like, "Okay, so show me your stuff." And I'm like, "Well, is your wife here?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, I do want a decision. I want to be clear about where I stand so I can prepare for another place if possible." He's like, "I'm just tired. Can you just show me your stuff and we'll figure it out?" I'm like, "All right," because he is giving me a place to stay. I don't have much say in the matter, so I show him my stuff, and he said the same thing. He's like, "I like it, but my wife's unsure." And I'm like, "What? That's fine. I'll just leave tomorrow. I don't want my living situation to be up in the air, so I'll leave tomorrow." And he's like, "Okay, but he said, "Okay, fine. Let's just leave tomorrow." And I'm like, "Okay, can I do my laundry tonight? Because I've done like I didn't say can I. I said like I'd like to do my laundry tonight. Who do I give it to?" And he's like, "Well, you can't do your laundry." And I'm like, "Well, we discussed that if I did 2 extra hours, then I could do my laundry." He's like, "No, I never said that." And I'm like, I argued with him for a while because I did zero good laundry. And he eventually was like, "Okay, fine, you can do 4 kilograms of laundry." And I'm like, "You didn't give me a limit. I have 6 kilograms about." And he's like, "Nope, 4." And I'm like, "Are you fucking serious?" So I did 4 kilograms of laundry. And the next morning I came downstairs and I got some breakfast, but they gave me a little less this time. And I don't know if he told them to not give me breakfast and then they felt sorry. I don't know what happened. But I was sitting and checkout time was at 1. And I was on my laptop looking for an Airbnb because I got some money from Fiverr, like a couple bucks. And I was like, okay, let's figure out where to go. I need to figure this out. And he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, I'd like the flyers. Like, I need the flyers, and you need to go. Why are you still here?" And I'm like, "Well, checkout's at 1. I'll leave before then, and I'm looking for an Airbnb right now. And also, we had a deal that I would stay 5 days. I didn't stay 5 days, so I'm not giving you the flyers." And he physically pushed me like super hard, and then he wound up his fist, and I could sense he was like holding it back, and he was like trying to get himself to not punch me. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna get my stuff, and I'm gonna leave right now." And so I go upstairs, and my laptop is on the table. And I already go upstairs, and I'm like, "Oh fuck, like I left my laptop. Like it's not gonna be there when I get back. He's gonna be trying to get the flyers off my laptop." Yeah, that was a mistake. And so it's too late. I got my stuff. I packed it up pretty quickly. It was pretty much packed up because I knew I was going to leave that day. And I went downstairs, and my laptop was gone. He was gone. And I found out he was at the front desk. And so he was with a couple of employees, and he had my laptop. And I'm like, "Hey, I'd like my laptop, and I'll leave. and then we can just move on and let this go behind us. And he's like, no, I need the flyers. And I'm like, okay. He's trying to get the flyers off, and somehow he got into my computer. And I'm like, well, okay. If I try to ask for my laptop when he's in this mood, then he might break it. Like he's in a mood where he's going to do pretty much anything. So if I insist to get my laptop, he might break it. So I'm like, well, it's probably better for me if I just give him the flyers and then leave. So I'm like, okay, well, how about this? I'll get the flyers off of the laptop, and then I'll get the laptop and I'll give you the flyers, and then I'll leave. And he's like, no, that's fine. I already got it. And he like pulls out a hard drive from the computer. Somehow he figured out how to get on my computer and get it. And he's like yelling. He's like, you'll have a place to stay tonight. Like, I pay off the police in this barrio. I own this barrio. Don't ever come back to this barrio. Like, I'm going to call the police right now. Like, I already called the police. They're on their way. They're going to arrest you because I pay them. And you'll have a place to sleep tonight in Colombian prison. And I'm like, he kept like saying that. He was just like spouting that as he was trying to get this stuff off my laptop. And I was like, oh shit. Like, my affect was super calm, like unnaturally calm. On the outside, I looked super calm. And I found out that was a superpower of mine in Colombia, is that I can instantly appear super calm when I'm threatened. And that scares people away. So at the time I wasn't trained in martial arts. So I was able to just scare people by appearing super calm, and they didn't want to do shit to me. So I'm like, okay, no problem. Like, I'll just get my laptop and I'll go. And I was like freaking out inside because this guy, I saw him with the police the day earlier. And again, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying he claimed it. So I don't know if this is true or not, but he claimed that he could pay the police off, and that he did. And I'm not saying it's true, but so he gave me my laptop, and he was yelling this at me, and I walked out, and I went to a cafe somewhat nearby, and got an Airbnb. And that's another story. So I have a couple of stories here. Actually, to be honest, this is going to have to be 3 parts. I know I said 2 parts, and I regret like saying something that wasn't 100% true. But I'm going to release both extra parts today. I just don't want it to be a super long video. So I'm going to release part 2 and part 3 today, so you don't have to wait. But I'm going to say this next part of the story, and then I'm going to go into the actual homeless part, which will be in part 3. But don't click off, because this part's freaking exciting too. And so I sit down at a cafe, and I look on Airbnb. I have I think $15 to my name or so, something like that. And I find a place, because at the time a dollar was 3,000 pesos, Colombian pesos. So it was about the exchange rate. And I go on Airbnb, and there is a place for 40,000 pesos, which is like around like $13, $14 or so. And then with the per night, with the tax. So I was like, okay, I have enough for one night. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do tomorrow, but I'm going to figure this out. I have enough for one night. And so I go ahead and I book this place. It's nearby. It's within walking distance. I found out though that it was like with my suitcase, it was just grueling trying to get up this like super steep driveway. And I get to the place and I knock on the door and I'm like, hey, I'm here for the Airbnb. And he's like, oh shit. He didn't say oh shit, but like I'm just paraphrasing, like, oh shit, like we're renting that place out and it's undergoing renovations right now. Like crap, like I'm so sorry, like we took that off the market. I'm like, oh man, like I can't wait for a refund. Like I don't have any extra money. I literally gave you my last cent because I had less than $1 in my bank account at that point. I'm like, I literally gave you my last cent. Like I don't know what to do. Like I gotta like I gave you money and then like, you know, it was on Airbnb and I understand like you're renovating it and like, are they moving in anytime soon? They're like, no, it's just renovations. And I'm like, he's like, okay, come in. And I come into his place. He seems to be successful. I think he's like a lawyer or something in the area. And he's really well spoken. He speaks good English, and he obviously has a bunch of like properties and investments. He's successful, And I'm like, he's like, you know what? All right, all right. We're not having any more work done until next week, and this was like a Friday or something. And they're not having any work done until next week, so you can stay the weekend. And I'm like, oh my god, thank you so much. Like I was so grateful because I didn't know if I was gonna be on the street or not, or I didn't know what I was gonna do that night. I was so scared, and so he introduces me to the place, and it's like a 2-bedroom flat. There's like 2 bedrooms, there's a bathroom, there's a kitchen, there's a balcony, and I'm just like, oh, I can relax. Oh my God, this is so nice. I was just so grateful. I was so grateful. You have no idea how grateful I was. I was so grateful. So thankful because I was going from place to place to place, not knowing where I was going to sleep tonight, sleeping in hostels, and and I got to relax, even if it was for a few days. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me at that moment. I mean, besides getting a bunch of money, which would have solved a lot of other problems. But I remember that was actually during my birthday. My birthday was like one of the days that I stayed there, and my girlfriend, the girl I was dating for a little over a month while I was in that city, she was like, hey Joe. She just surprised me. She was like, hey, like I'm on my way, or like, are you gonna be there tonight or something? And I'm like, yeah. She came over and she brought me a cake, and I was like, oh my god, I was so grateful. It was like a cake with strawberries on it, and oh man, I was so grateful. I didn't know what to do. I was just so thankful, and she stayed over, and I needed that so badly. I needed that so badly. She really took care of me and helped me out, and it was an amazing situation for me. It was a great situation because I didn't know what I was gonna do, but she ended up being there for me, and it was amazing to have that companionship and that place to stay, and I was so grateful. But the worst was yet to come. And so I'll talk about that in the part that I'll release later today. This I'll release now, and then later today I'll release part number 2. And part number 2 is going to talk about how I went to Medellín, Colombia, and then had to try to exchange services and other hostels for in exchange for stay, and then I ended up being homeless on the street, and another guy who was homeless almost swindled me out of all my possessions, including my laptop and my phone and everything. And that was and then like one last thing I completely forgot about this. The last day I stayed in Cali, I was staying at a bed and breakfast, not an Airbnb, but like a B&B, and I'll talk about this more in depth. And I had a little bit of extra money that I hadn't spent. I was like, hey, like I can't pay you. Can I pay you when I leave? And they're cool with that. And then the day was coming up when I was going to leave, and I didn't know. And they wanted the money like then, and I couldn't give it then. Like I was like, okay. And so I had to figure out how to get money super quick because they were also threatening to like get me arrested, and because I wasn't paying them. So I'll tell you how I solved that, and then I'll do that in part 3. Stay tuned, subscribe so you get notifications when it's out later today.